it was meeting Dorina Koopman. Miss Koopman was a young teacher at Bullard High School who traveled to Tenaya to teach German 1. She was always working to build the German program. I think that there were about 15 kids in the class. All of us were in the midst of the goofiness and awkwardness that defines those early teenage years. At 13, I was so uncomfortable in my skin that I just wanted to listen to Duran Duran on my Walkman. Google that if you need to. And disappear into the crowd. German was my favorite class, and it was my favorite place to be. It was all that you would imagine, a room full of 13 and 14-year-olds trying to learn German and trying not to embarrass themselves. These were sometimes too incongruous goals. Learning to count was fraught with difficulty. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The fact that Zex sounded like sex made us giggle for months. On another occasion, we had to come up with a name for our homeroom football team. We chose the Hunky Dories. Get it? Dorina, Dory, Hunky Dories. Miss Koopman did not endorse the name. And she changed it to something a bit less bizarre. Somehow we managed to slip our preferred name back on the paperwork before it was submitted. We were beside ourselves when the principal announced on the school intercom that the Hunky Dories were to play at lunch. We got to enjoy that every morning for weeks. Thank you, Principal Shore. Clearly, 1984 was a simpler time. Miss Koopman laughed along with us, and we were the only ones that got the joke. Being in the German program was so often like that. You felt like you were a part of a group that was in on something. When I graduated from Bullard in 1989, and yes, that's 20 years ago for those of you keeping track, I had 9 plays, 1 AP test, 4 German camps, and an endless number of conjugated verbs under my belt. I learned so much. I learned about Bertolt Brecht, poetry, and Der Kleine Prinz. I saw Guten Tag films and experienced the creepiness of the Grimm brothers auf Deutsch. I found out that nouns have genders and they like to be capitalized. Who knew? What made even more of an impression upon me than learning German was Miss Koopman. She was so different from other teachers and women that surrounded me. Dorina was well-traveled, self-assured, intellectual, political, and humorous. I hadn't met anyone quite like her. She recommended books and foreign films. I was a teenager who spent my time reading The Handmaid's Tale, Beloved, and The Mists of Avalon. And as you all know, nothing makes a girl more popular in high school than reading a lot of edgy feminist literature. Am I right, ladies? When I asked her to type up a list of books I should read, she filled 2 pages with classics and more modern works of literature. It was ambitious and challenging. It would never have occurred to her to dumb it down for the 15-year-old. Miss Koopman made you feel as if you were capable of tackling anything. There were so many times that she had more faith in my abilities than I did. Dorina always made time to listen to her students, despite the many classes she had to prep for. She listened to endless hours of our teenage storm when drawn. She advised us academically, guided our intellectual growth, and talked with us about our family and our friends. She let so many of us release steam from the pressure cooker of our high school existence, and that is no small thing. Dorina was a great listener. To have a conversation with her was to experience her sense of grace. Rather than dispense advice, she would walk you through a situation with questions and bits of insight. She wanted you to have the satisfaction of finding your own solution. After high school, I saw Dorina infrequently. I went to college, started professional life, got married, and had kids. Over those years, I realized how profound Dorina's influence was upon me. She showed me what it was to be a smart, strong, and independent woman. She taught me about integrity and taking responsibility for my actions. Those Koopman lessons would pop up over the years in so many different situations. Dorena and I recently became reacquainted. For the past 3 years, we have met monthly for coffee at La Boulangerie. We talked about everything: her life with Jane, my kids, the ranch, cancer, teaching, family dynamics, how to steam an artichoke, the presidential race, and what happened at Bullard that day. We covered the big stuff and the trivial. As we hugged and parted ways in the parking lot, I always felt better than I had before we talked. Whether I was 13 or 38, her words had a reassuring effect upon me. I was one of hundreds of people whose life was touched by Dorena. She has played a role in the lives of so many students, parents, teachers, and administrators. Okay, well, maybe a handful of administrators. Just the really good ones, and you know who you are. Dorena had high expectations of those around her. She was a vocal advocate for children, and she truly loved teaching. Before school started this year, I asked her, "Don't you ever get tired of teaching? I mean, starting it over again and again each year." She tilted her head and she fidgeted with her napkin and replied with a tone of wonder, "No, I still really love it. I get excited to go back every year." I know that her students have always been important to her, but I believe that her relationship with her students while she battled cancer for the past 11 years helped to sustain her and give her a seemingly endless amount of strength for her fight. Please know, you young whippersnappers, that you meant the world to Dorena. As for me, I will miss my friend terribly. I take tremendous comfort in the fact that her influence and lessons are inextricably woven into everything that I do. Thank you, Dorena, for pulling me into that German 1 class. What I gained from that was so much bigger than a bread box. Thank you.
Ich werde natürlich auf Deutsch sprechen. Naja, Dorena, sei nicht sauer. Don't be pissed. Wir mussten diesen Prozess zusammen anfangen. We had to begin this process together. Ich hätte das nie allein schaffen können. I could never have managed it alone. Sie versteht schon, es ist wie in Der kleine Prinz. Wenn man etwas zähmt, wird man immer dafür verantwortlich. Diese Verantwortlichkeit hast du freiwillig akzeptiert. Jetzt siehst du die Wirkung davon, unsere Dankbarkeit. For those of you who don't speak German, I'm speaking quite movingly about a theme in I'll wrap it up now. Also Dori, nochmal, sei nicht sauer. Don't be pissed. Wir sind einfach dankbar. We're simply grateful. Zutiefst dankbar. I'm profoundly grateful. Dass du unser Weg beleuchtet hast. That you illuminated our path. Wie Kieselsteine. Und das ist gar nicht so schlimm, oder? Danke.
Well, I'd just like to say how grateful I am to be here tonight, and in particular, I'm so grateful to all of these students that are sitting here for what you've reminded me of tonight. I've held such a deep love for Dorena all these years, and it's been 19 years since I graduated from Bullard, probably before anyone here was even born. But you brought it back to life so vividly, and for all of us in the room who have already graduated, it's really incredible, because it was such a deep and meaningful experience to be her student all of this time, and you know, so many years later. And everything that you've spoken about tonight